Welcome to the Shadows of Fear channel. Now I will guide you through a world of darkness, witches, and unknown creatures. I hope this helps you disconnect from your daily routine and relax. To avoid any visual distractions, we will leave the screen black and let your imagination run wild. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your country. Now, let's begin. Not long ago, I met up with some mates from secondary school. Not all of them, of course. You know how it goes. We're all around 35 or 36 now. Some are married, others moved to different cities, a few even left the country, and then there are those who don't even reply anymore. But every now and then, a few of us manage to cross paths. That night, after what felt like ages, almost the whole group got together. It felt good, familiar. We met at Edgar's house, same place we'd hung out 1,000 times before. It had been years since I'd seen some of them. Over a few beers and heaps of old stories, we started reminiscing. Classes, music, the mad teachers, everything. It was one of those rare nights where you laugh so much it feels like your worries just vanish for a while. Then someone brought up that party in Cuernavaca. To be honest, I didn't care much for the story. Everyone talked about it like it was the memory from our school days. But I hadn't gone. Then Javier said something, quickly offhand, and it struck me as odd at first. Remember when Moy just turned up at the party without chipping in or bringing anything? Showed up late as usual. Everyone started laughing. He was talking about me. I stayed quiet, thinking he'd made a mistake, maybe confused me with someone else. But then someone else chimed in. Oh yeah, with that car that made more noise than it moved. You could hear it coming a mile away. Remember that, Moy? And they pointed straight at me. That's when I stopped them and said, I think you've got the wrong person. Sounds like a good party, though. A weird silence followed, awkward, like no one knew what to say. Then they laughed again, thought I was messing about, trying to be funny. But I insisted, no, seriously, when was that? I've never been to a party in Cuernavaca, ever. And then it started. Everyone jumped in. No, how could I forget? It was the bank holiday in 2008. 2 cars, a cousin's house. I'd shown up late when everyone was already half cut. There was a lot of booze and other stuff too. Were they that far gone they hallucinated me? I even said that, but no one laughed. They just kept trying to convince me. One by one, with the kind of certainty that starts to feel heavy, like it presses on your mind. But I remember that weekend perfectly. I was in Veracruz. My grandmother was very ill. My whole family had gathered. It wasn't just a visit. It was one of those moments you don't forget. Ever. I told them that. Told them I had photos, messages, whatever they wanted. I was not in Cuernavaca. But they kept saying I was taking the piss, that maybe I'd been off my face and didn't remember. But I don't even drink like that. Never have. Especially not back then. I was ready to drop it. Maybe it was a joke, something they'd all cooked up. But a couple hours later, just as we were saying our goodbyes, Irene came over. She was my quiet crush in school. Nothing ever happened between us, but she'd always been special to me. More than the girlfriends I did have. And even now, all these years later, she came over with that same smile, but a different look in her eyes. You were there, she said. I swear I wasn't, I replied. It was a really lovely night, at least for me. That's why I remember it so well, Moy. I felt weird. Like she was talking to a version of me that never existed, or maybe one I'd forgotten. Then she pulled out her phone, opened Facebook, went to her old albums, from the days when we'd post 20 photos a day. She said, "Haven't opened this in ages, but look," and there it was, the photo. Her, me, a bunch of our mates. Outside, warm weather, garden party vibes, everyone laughing. I was right in the middle, arm around Irene, wearing a navy blue t-shirt I've never owned, holding a drink. I asked when she posted it. Same weekend, Sunday, when we got back. She showed me the date, 1st of February 2008. I didn't know what to say. I was in a hospital in Veracruz that day. I remember everything, not just because of the pain of those days, but because there was no way I could have slipped off to a party, no way to be in two places at once. And yet, there I was, in that photo, my face, my body, my smile, my friends. I had no idea what to say. She just hugged me and said, "I don't know why you're denying it, but it's all right." I've never brought it up again. Haven't looked at the photo since. Deleted my Facebook years ago, but sometimes I still remember it. And I don't know what's stranger, the picture or the unshakable certainty that I was never there, that everyone else is sure I was, and that this other version of me doesn't belong to me at all. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. Hello, my name's Julio Bercelio. I'm 22, and this is the first time I've ever told this story. It was my girlfriend who pushed me to do it. She said it sounded like the kind of thing that would fit perfectly here. To be honest, I don't even know if this was paranormal or not, but it's definitely the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't add up. Like something otherworldly. This happened a couple of years ago when I was 20. I was still living with my parents back then in a quiet neighborhood far from the city center. Safe, peaceful, but way too isolated. That night, I went out with some friends. We had a party to go to near the center, and since I already knew we'd be out late, I'd arranged to stay at my grandparents' place nearby. I'd asked them a few days earlier, and they said of course. Told me to take my key and not to worry if they were already asleep when I arrived. They'd lock the door from the inside but leave it open for me. I told them not to wait up. I went out, got caught up in the night with my friends, and before I knew it, it was past 6 in the morning. I felt awful. I'd never stayed out that late without letting someone know, but I still made my way to my grandparents' house on foot. It was still a bit dark when I got there, around 6:30. I knocked softly, but the door was already open. That told me they were up. I felt even guiltier. They must have been worried when I didn't show up. I stepped inside and I heard them chatting in the kitchen, cheerfully, like they were just having their morning coffee. I remember feeling relieved. They didn't seem upset. But then they saw me, and their faces just changed. Not like they were annoyed or surprised. No, it was fear. Real fear. My grandma clutched her chest and my grandpa asked, "What are you doing here?" I was confused. I told them I'd already asked to stay over, that my parents even reminded them just the day before. I asked if they'd forgotten. My grandpa stared at me and said, Yes, they did tell us. That's why we waited for you. That's why we left the door open last night until we went to bed. So what's going on? I said, I'm here now. I just got back. And that's when my grandmother said something I still have trouble repeating. Sweetheart, but you already came home last night. I laughed. Thought it was a joke, but they weren't joking, not even close. Their faces were serious, confused, disturbed. They told me that around midnight, they heard me come in. My grandpa was watching TV in the living room and said he saw me walk past into the guest room. My grandma, who was in the kitchen, even asked if I wanted anything to eat, and someone who looked exactly like me, replied from inside the room, "No thanks, I'm just tired, gonna sleep." My grandpa said I was wearing the same clothes I had on when I walked in just then. Same jacket, same everything. I asked if they were sure. They said yes. That they not only saw me go in, but in the morning, just before I actually arrived, they stood outside the guest room door and asked if I wanted breakfast. And from inside, I answered, "I'll be out in a minute." But then, minutes later, I walked through the front door. They didn't know what to think. Neither did I. I told them it was impossible, that I'd stayed at the party until sunrise, that I didn't leave early, that I didn't have another version of me walking around. So together we went to check the guest room. You have no idea, Shadows of Fear community, the dread we felt walking down that hallway. The bed was messy, like someone had slept in it, the blanket pulled back, and the bathroom door slightly ajar with steam still hanging in the air, as if someone had just used the hot water. I felt something. It's hard to explain, but I knew someone had been in that room. You could feel it in the air. My grandpa felt it too. We looked at each other. We checked the whole place. No one was there. Nothing. Just a room that showed signs someone had spent the night, as if I had, but I hadn't. And then, I don't know if it was my imagination, I heard something at the front door, like it had just been opened or closed, like someone had left. We stood there, the three of us, in silence, not knowing what to say. After that, nothing else happened. It never happened again. No strange noises, no ghostly visitors, nothing. Just that. I remember the moment like it was a dream. My grandparents staring at me staring back, all of us stuck with the same question. Who was it that arrived before me? That thing that came in the night. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. This happened to me a few months ago, and even though some time has passed, I still don't know what to make of it. I can't explain it. Believe me, I've tried, but I know it was real. Because I was there. Because I heard her. My name's Mauricio, and I live with my wife, Leslie. We're expecting our first child. She's 7 months pregnant now, and honestly, it's been good. Not easy, but full of moments that teach you things. Sure, there have been cravings at odd hours, but nothing you wouldn't do when you love the person you're building a life with. That night, the one I want to tell you about, it was around 11:15 when Leslie said she was dying for some strawberries and cream. We didn't have anything sweet in the house, and I told her she could wait until the morning, but she gave me that look, the one that says, "There's no substitute for this." She looked so tired, but happy. So I said yes. How could I say no? We live in a quiet neighborhood, but once it gets late, it feels almost deserted. Still, I got in the car and set out to find something open. I figured there was at least one 24-hour shop about 10 minutes away. I pulled up the map on my phone and connected it to the car, though nothing was coming up. I left it open on the dashboard anyway and drove off. As I turned down a dimly lit street, almost at the shop, the map suddenly vanished from the screen. A call was coming in. It was her, my wife. I answered right away, thinking she'd changed her mind or remembered something else. But as soon as I picked up, I knew something was wrong. The signal was terrible. Her voice came through, barely audible, like it wasn't meant for me. Like she was speaking aloud to herself, like she didn't even know someone was listening. She said, "Don't come back. Please, Mauricio, don't come back. No matter what happens, don't come back to the house." Then the line cut. The map reappeared on the screen, and I felt cold. Not just scared, cold. Like something had brushed against the inside of my chest. I spun the car around. I didn't think, didn't hesitate. I just drove as fast as I could. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely breathe. I didn't know if we'd been robbed, if someone had broken in. I just needed to get back. Fast. When I got home, the front door was shut. Everything was quiet. For a moment, that scared me even more. But then I heard the TV. She was there, on the sofa, watching a movie. She smiled at me like, "Hey, where are my strawberries?" and asked if I couldn't find anything. I didn't know what to say. I walked over to her, took her phone, and asked, "Why did you call me like that?" She looked confused, said she hadn't called me, that she'd been watching the movie since I left. I told her to check the call log. I didn't believe her, but there was nothing. No outgoing calls in hours. Nothing. So I told her everything. How I'd heard her, what she'd said, how the call just ended. She went pale. I could see it in her face. Fear. The real kind. She asked me not to leave the house again. Not for anything. Told me we should lock everything and just go to bed. She said maybe it was a dream, that I was tired. But she didn't say it like she believed it. She said it like she was trying to believe it. She went to the bathroom for a minute. I stayed in the kitchen, making tea for both of us. I needed to calm down. I could hear the kettle heating up, and then 3 knocks. Clear, soft, but firm. On the front door. I froze. It wasn't loud, but it was intentional, like someone knew we were inside. A few seconds later, she came out of the bathroom and asked, "Did you hear that too?" I nodded. We slowly walked toward the hallway, tried to peek through one of the front windows, but no one was there. No cars, no sound, just stillness. We waited, nothing. We locked the door, checked every window, left 2 lamps on, and went upstairs to the bedroom. We didn't sleep that night. We just stayed there, quiet together, staring at the door, listening, just in case. But nothing else happened. Only the fear. That fear that clung to us until the sky finally began to lighten. We haven't heard anything since. And we're still waiting for this baby, more excited than ever. At least now, we've got a story to tell. One we'll share one day. The strange night we had while we waited for you. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. Hi everyone. My name's Sophia, I'm 29, and I work in graphic design. Though most days I feel more like a full-time emergency switchboard. Meetings, pitches, last-minute fixes, and lately, just trying to stay afloat. Maybe that's why this hit me the way it did. When you're buried in your routine, running on autopilot, the last thing you expect is for reality to suddenly glitch. This happened a couple of weeks ago. A Friday, late afternoon, I was heading home after a long, exhausting day, hungry, irritated, drained. I got off the bus and stopped by a corner shop 3 blocks from my flat. I know it well. I've been there 1,000 times. Big enough to get lost in, somewhere between a convenience store and a supermarket. I just wanted something simple. A sports drink, a bag of crisps, and something sweet. A bit of comfort to survive the day. There were 2 people in the queue. I got in line, pulled out my phone, and started scrolling. So absorbed I didn't notice anything around me, not until the door on the far end creaked open. The one that leads to the street, the one nobody ever uses. And for a second, everything just stopped. A woman stepped in. Light wash jeans, black t-shirt, gray hoodie, a frayed blue backpack, exactly like mine. Same fringe, same haircut, same everything. It was me. That's how my brain phrased it, instantly. That's me. And she saw me too. We looked at each other, just for a second. Not too long. Not too short. Just enough. Enough for a chill to crawl straight down my spine. But the worst part wasn't seeing her, it was her expression. The shock, the fear. Like she had recognized me. Like she couldn't believe I was there. Like she was just as terrified as I was. As if I were the double. As if I were the unnatural thing. Then she turned. Just like that. Walked out the same door she came through. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Neither did anyone else. The 2 people in front of me didn't even glance up. The cashier was staring at the till. No one seemed to notice a thing. I stepped out of the queue and walked toward the door. Not running, but quick. Pushed it open, and there was nothing. No one. I looked both ways, walked to the corner. Still nothing, not even a shadow. It's not a big street, nowhere to hide. If she'd run, I'd have heard footsteps. Someone else would have seen her. But no, she was just gone. I walked home like a ghost, empty. Didn't buy a thing, didn't speak, just floated back like I wasn't really in my own body. I couldn't explain it. I went straight to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Touched my face, my hoodie, my backpack. It was all still me. And yet, I felt hollow. That night I barely slept, no surprise there. And ever since I can't stop thinking about her. That other version of me, her face, her fear, the way she left, like she couldn't bear to be in the same space as me. Like I was the one who wasn't supposed to be there. I have no answers, no theories, nothing. I want to make sense of it, but I can't. Was it a ghost, a split, an astral projection while wide awake, a slip in time? If such things exist, which, until that moment, I never believed they did. Maybe one day I will walk through that back door, the one nobody uses, and I'll see myself, standing in line holding a drink, crisps, and something sweet to feel less miserable. Since then, every time I step into a shop, I glance at mirrors, check CCTV monitors, catch my reflection in glass, because I can't stop thinking, what if it happens again? And if it does, this time, it'll be different. I don't know if I'm more afraid of seeing her again or of never seeing her at all. I know most people won't take this seriously, but I also know there's someone out there, just one person even, who'll get it, who knows exactly what it's like to feel that crack in reality. Has this ever happened to anyone else? The real question is, if I see her again, if I see me again, do I run after her or do I let her go? What would you do? If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. My name's Daniel, and I work in a call center that closes pretty late. I live in Claveria, in Mexico City, so I usually get off at Kitlawak Station on Metro Line 2. I'm used to taking the last trains of the night, nearly empty by that hour. Stations feel different at night, but that night, something was really off. I don't know how to explain it. It felt out of place, like I'd stepped into somewhere else entirely. I left work around 11:15, got on the train at Hidalgo like always. I was tired, headphones on, not in the mood for anything. I grabbed a seat by the window, put some music on, and I must have dozed off. Didn't feel like I was out for long, maybe a station or two. But then the sound of the doors woke me, and something didn't add up. The carriage was completely empty, and I mean completely. These trains are open all the way through, and there wasn't a single person in sight. The train had stopped. I wasn't scared at first, just leaned over to check which station we were at. That's when it hit me. I didn't recognize it, and I know that line. There was no station name, no maps, no ads, just a dirty wall stained with what looked like old water damage, and a bench at the far end of the platform. The lights weren't flickering, but they weren't fully on either. Like the bulbs were all half dead. Everything felt abandoned. And the worst part? The doors stayed open, like they were waiting for me, but I didn't move. No way. I looked out, trying to spot someone on the platform. A cop, a cleaner, a late passenger, anyone. But there was no one. Not a single soul, just silence. That thick, humming kind of silence that echoes inside your bones. That's when the real fear kicked in. I started wondering if I'd missed my stop, if I was dreaming, if I'd somehow gotten on the wrong train. But none of it made sense. That station doesn't exist. It shouldn't exist. I sat there, frozen, staring out through the window. And then, after what felt like forever, the doors finally closed. The train moved on. We pulled into Cuatro Caminos and everything was back to normal. A few people got off in a hurry. I didn't get the chance to see their faces. Whether they looked shaken or whether to them nothing strange had happened at all. Truth is, I'd been asleep longer than I thought. I'd passed several stops, though it felt like barely a minute. I checked the time. I still had a chance to catch the last train back the other way to Quitlowoc. But I didn't. I got out of the station as fast as I could, flagged down a taxi, asked him to take me home. But even then, halfway there, I asked to be let out early. I needed to walk. I needed air. That cold night air that somehow felt like exactly what I needed. I walked all the way home, and ever since that night, I haven't stopped thinking about what I saw, or, as my boyfriend says, what I dreamed. That station that doesn't show up on any map, that no one talks about, but that was there, just that one night. But listen, you know when you're asleep. And I swear to you, I was wide awake. I know this story might not sound terrifying, and people who don't ride the metro might roll their eyes, say it's made up, but I wanted to share it, just in case someone else has seen it too. Just in case someone else has felt the train stop somewhere it shouldn't, just before Cuatro Caminos. If that's you, please leave a comment. I'll be watching, because I need to know I'm not the only one. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. This happened to me a couple of years ago, back when I worked for a well-known furniture company, famous for its fancy office chairs and those high-end gamer ones. You've probably seen the brand. Sleek, expensive, the kind people show off in their setups. My job wasn't just dropping them off. I had to deliver and assemble the chairs at customers' homes or in offices, wherever I was told to. That day, I had a delivery in Coyoacan to one of those big old houses. Loads of rooms, full of decoration, kind of grand in a quiet way. From the outside, you wouldn't think much of it, but once inside, you could feel it. That very Mexican style. Vivid colors, tiled walls, and Virgin Mary statues everywhere. Like something straight out of an old film about wealthy families. The housekeeper opened the door, said the owner wasn't in, but I could come in and put the chair together at my own pace. She showed me to a study, a little room right by the stairs, then told me she was popping out to the shops. At the top of the stairs, on the landing, there was this life-size statue of a virgin. Very detailed. But it wasn't the Virgin of Guadalupe, or any of the ones I recognized. It looked more European, more solemn. I felt like I'd seen it before, maybe in a documentary about Eastern Europe or something. But I couldn't be sure. Up to that point, everything was normal. I carried the box into the study, laid out the parts and my tools, and started assembling the chair. I had another delivery after this, so I was on a schedule. I was screwing in part of the backrest when I heard a thud behind me, like something had fallen near the stairs. Then, almost instantly, there was this sound. Someone running. I turned quickly. From where I was, I couldn't see the staircase directly, but I could see a bit of the landing upstairs through the railing. And I swear to you, I saw someone run past. Didn't catch much detail, but it looked like they were covering their head, maybe with a towel or blanket. I jumped up, but I didn't leave the study. Honestly, it looked like someone had just stepped out of the shower and was dashing across the hall, except the house was supposed to be empty. Or maybe the housekeeper hadn't left yet, but that couldn't be, because I saw her leave. I went back to the chair and kept working, but something felt off. About 2 minutes later, I heard footsteps again, this time louder, closer, running. I stepped out of the study, dead certain there was someone upstairs. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking up, right at the Virgin. And that's when I noticed something that didn't sit right. It looked like her head had moved. I know how it sounds. But when I arrived, the statue was facing forward, directly toward the stairs and the door to the study. Now her head seemed turned slightly, looking off to her left. It was subtle, but I swear it was different. Or maybe I just convinced myself it was. I stood there, frozen, couldn't stop staring. That's when the housekeeper came back in, bags in hand, said hello, all cheerful like nothing was wrong. Saw me staring at the statue, didn't say a word, just walked upstairs calmly, opened a small drawer near the statue, pulled out this velvet-wrapped chain, walked over to the Virgin, wrapped the chain around her waist, clicked it shut, like she was fastening a seatbelt. And that was that. She came back down like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Asked me if I was nearly done. I said yes, almost. I finished the job as quickly as I could and got out without asking anything else. To this day, I don't know what I saw. I don't know if the Virgin really moved or if I imagined it. But what I do know is that ever since then, anytime I had a delivery in one of those big old houses in Coyoacan, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. Like maybe, just maybe, it could happen again. And with that, I'll leave you, hoping I never have another story to share. Here, in Shadows of Fear. Now, let's continue. My name's Melly, though I'd rather just leave it at that. Not because I'm afraid, but because this story touches on some people in my family, and I don't know if they'd be comfortable with me telling it. What I can say is we're from a very small town in Aguascalientes, and what I'm about to share has been passed down for generations. They say in my family that the youngest children, the last born on my dad's side, carry something. Some call it a gift. Others, a burden. Whatever it is, you have to learn to live with it. And even though it shows up differently in each of us, it always shows up. I could tell you I was a happy child. I played a lot with my siblings and cousins at my grandparents' house. Nothing unusual, really, except maybe for how I was born. Years later, I found out my mom nearly died having me. And someone once told me that people who come that close to death at birth carry something back with them, like a mark, like a thread still tied to the other side. The first time I remember something strange happening, I was 6. I didn't understand it. I didn't even know what ghosts were. No one ever taught us to be afraid of things we couldn't see. My mom's a very logical woman. If you touch fire, you'll get burned. If you talk to strangers, you might get taken. But no boogeyman's going to get you nonsense. And honestly, I think that's a good way to raise kids. Power cuts were a regular thing in my village. We'd move through the house with candles. It never scared us. That was just normal. Ghosts? Not really a thing for us. I remember this one night, I got up to go to the loo. I had a candle in my hand. The bathroom was big, with this massive mirror over the sink. My sister and I used to mess around in front of it, pulling faces. We had this game. If you made enough faces, your real soul would come out. Silly, of course. But that night, for some reason, I started playing it alone. At first I was just grinning, making faces. But then something odd happened. The candle beside me flickered, like someone had blown on it. There was no breeze, no open window. I looked in the mirror. My face danced in and out of shadow with the flickering light. And then, in that flicker, just for a heartbeat, my reflection started making faces again, even though I'd stopped. I froze, but then it went back to normal. I reached for the candle to leave, but in another flicker, something else appeared. In the reflection right behind me. A figure. Tall. So tall its head nearly touched the top of the doorway. I couldn't see its face, but it had long hair. It appeared just like that, in a blink. Like a single frame from a film. I spun around, but there was nothing. I looked back at the mirror, and in another flicker, it was there again. But closer, taking a step towards me. I couldn't move. Not out of choice. I physically couldn't. Like a deer in the road, blinded by headlights. All I could do was close my eyes. I didn't want to see anymore. That's when I felt it, right behind me. Its chin pressing against the top of my head. I heard it breathing, sniffing me, like it was savoring the fact I was frozen, paralyzed. And then the candle went out. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't see a thing. Nothing. Just complete darkness. I screamed and ran, bumping into everything. My mom came rushing in, but I didn't tell her what I'd seen. I just said the dark had scared me. And that's strange, isn't it? Most kids would have said they saw a ghost. But I didn't. It took years before I told her the truth. And that's when I found out I wasn't the only one in the family. My cousins had stories too. They spoke about them the way people talk about traffic. Annoying, but just part of life. One of them had a ghost that stuck to her, followed her, even when she moved house. Most of the time, it just lingered. But sometimes it got angry. And when it did, she could see it out the corner of her eye or standing just beyond a doorway. Another cousin once saw a boy in one of our uncle's houses. She spoke to him. He told her he used to live there. Turned out, he was a real boy. One only the older cousins had known. He died long before she was even born. Over time, I learned to live with them, with the dead. People no one else could see. Incomplete people. Ones missing arms, legs, even heads. Always faded, always blurred, always broken in some way. I learned not to talk about it. Until something changed. I was at uni. A mate invited me to her house to work on a project. Everything was normal. But when we arrived, her dad gave me this look, like he recognized me from somewhere. Later, while we were working, she went to get us drinks. When she came back, she said, "Hey, my dad wants to talk to you. Can you come to the kitchen?" So I went. And as soon as I walked in, he said, "You can see them too, can't you?" I barely managed to say anything. See what? My dad sees the dead too, my friend said. He told me that in his family, the ability was passed down on purpose. But mine, he said, was different, inherited, something I'd been born with. And then he asked if I was ready for what might be coming. He said he could see in my eyes that I hadn't witnessed anything truly dark yet, but that I would, maybe soon. He warned me, said that if anyone ever told me they could take this gift away, they were lying. But if I wanted, he could teach me how to pause it, to put it on hold. I didn't know what to say. I thought about my grandfather, my mom's dad. He was like a soulmate to me, the one person who truly understood me. He died when I was 12, and I always hoped, especially after that night in the bathroom mirror, that this gift might let me see him again someday. So I told him no. I didn't want to pause anything, even if it meant something awful might come. If there was a chance I could see my granddad again, then it would be worth it. I never told him that I did see him again, that he was right, that the darkness came, just like he said it would, and that when it came, I saw it. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. I'll begin this story the way many others have, by saying I'm not someone who usually believes in the paranormal. Maybe that's why I hesitated for so long to tell it. But what happened to me a few years ago, it still won't let me rest. It happened on a stretch of wasteland near a city close to Monterey. Back then, I was deep into fitness. I worked in the city center, clocked out at 7, hit the gym around 9:30, and left between 10:30 and 11. I'd take a bus route that dropped me about 20 minutes from home, and from there I had to walk. The worst part of that walk was this huge empty lot, pitch dark, overgrown with weeds, some as tall as young trees. My mom always warned me about muggers, but I was used to it. Nothing had ever happened, until one night, right as I stepped into the lot, I saw someone, about 40 meters away. An older man, maybe around 60. He held one of those tiny pen lights that barely shine. He was perfectly still, standing there, staring at the ground. The torch pointed straight down, like he was searching for something, or waiting. He didn't move, didn't even look up when I walked by. I didn't make a sound, just veered off the path and took the long way around, just to avoid him. A few days later, I saw him again. Same clothes, same torch, different spot, still motionless. I stared at him for a while, more curious this time, but he didn't respond. As if he wasn't really there, as if I was the only one who could see him. I saw him again, and again, always the same. Each time filled me with that same strange mix of dread and fascination. I started getting anxious just thinking about walking through that place. I'd feel it even at the gym, that tightening in my chest. Just once, I wasn't alone. There were 4 of us, strangers, but we happened to reach the lot at the same time. Without a word, we walked in together. It was an unspoken agreement, something that happened when people found each other before crossing. Safety in numbers, even if we didn't know one another. And there he was again, this time much closer to the path. What chilled me to the bone was that, despite how close he was, not one of them said a word. Not even a polite evening. No one else seemed to see him at all. As I walked past, I glanced down to see what his torch was shining on. I don't know if it was the first time there'd ever been something there, or if I'd just never been close enough to notice. It was a clear bottle of water, full, placed carefully at his feet, as if it meant something important. I didn't ask the others. I didn't want to sound mad. I just picked up the pace. But that wasn't the worst part. That came later. Another night, walking back, I spotted something in the grass. I was on the path, barely lit by a single distant street lamp. I slowed down. Off to the left, nestled in the overgrown weeds, was what looked like a head. Just sticking out of the grass, I froze. First thought, someone's crouching, waiting, maybe to rob me. Then I saw another head on the other side of the path. I nearly turned and bolted, but I didn't. Maybe it was fear, maybe stubbornness. I stayed where I was. Then the figure on the right moved, fast. On all fours, it darted across to the left side. Then the one on the left did the same, scuttled to the right, quick, silent. Just shadows in the tall grass. I wanted to believe they were dogs. I desperately wanted to believe that. But something was off. Something was wrong. I could feel it deep in my chest. And then one of them crossed again, slower this time, like it wanted to be seen. And I saw it, not clearly, not in detail, but enough. Enough to know it had a body, small, like a baby's. Tiny arms, tiny legs, crawling on all fours, but not like an animal, like something else. I was paralyzed. My legs wouldn't move. My right one shook uncontrollably. My eyes burned, like I was about to cry. But I couldn't move a muscle. And the more I tried to make sense of what I was seeing, the less sense it made. It was like my brain couldn't process it. Like it just short-circuited. As soon as I could move, I started walking backwards slowly. I never took my eyes off them. I didn't want to. I couldn't let them get closer. Just as I was about to leave the lot, I saw another shape crossing at the far end. I don't know if it was the same one. I don't know how many there were, but they all looked the same. I tried to take photos, zoomed in, took a few, even filmed a video. Every single image came out black. Nothing. Just darkness. Like whatever was there only existed in the dark. A few days later, I walked past the edge of the lot. From the safety of the pavement, I saw them again, in the distance, still there, as if they were waiting. As if they knew I was meant to pass through. But I didn't. I never did again. It's been years now. I haven't seen them since. And I haven't set foot in that place. Not even in daylight. That lot, the one people do talk about now, it's full of stories, full of sightings. But the strangest thing, everyone who's seen something in that place describes something different. Have you seen the shadows too? If you've got a story, something strange, something you can't explain, send it in. Yours could be the next tale we share here on Shadows of Fear. Comment, subscribe, and remember, some places never forget you. Now, let's continue. I'm from Naucalpan, but I work in Mexico City, which means I have to commute there every single day. So I take public transport, specifically one of those small buses we call micros, for the last stretch of the journey. For those who don't know, a micro is like a compact city bus used in big cities across the country, though it goes by different names depending on where you are. The thing is, these buses can be dangerous, not because of what's inside, but because of how they're driven. The drivers race each other to pick up more passengers. You get used to it. The bumps, the sharp turns, the sudden stops. This happened on a Monday. I remember it because it was one of those weeks at work where everything piles up. I left the office late, rushed to catch the metro, then the micro. I was exhausted and just hoping to get a bit of sleep before doing it all over again the next day. That's where my head was, lost in the fog of fatigue, when I noticed the bus was nearly empty. That wasn't unusual. I'm usually one of the last people on board, but this time, something felt off. Something unsettled me. I noticed the driver kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, again and again. I reached into my bag, searching for the pepper spray I'd carried around for years without ever needing it, but it was gone. No idea when or why I took it out. Then the man who'd been sitting behind the driver got off, and the driver kept watching me in the mirror. I was sitting about halfway down the bus. I turned to see who else was still on board. Just one woman, way in the back, pressed against the window. An older lady. She didn't look like she'd be much help, but I kept her in the corner of my eye. I prayed she wouldn't get up or ask to stop, because I didn't know what I'd do if she left and I was alone with the driver. On a street I didn't recognize. Then suddenly, the driver spoke. "Hey, miss, why don't you come sit up closer?" His voice sent a chill down my spine. I told him I was fine, that I'd be getting off soon anyway. I kept catching glimpses of his eyes in the mirror. They looked more anxious with every glance. My heart was racing. I needed to move, so I stood up and started walking to the back, to sit near the woman by the rear door. But when I got there, she was gone. Gone. I froze. She hadn't looked strange. Just a woman, an old woman, eyes closed, resting. My breath caught in my throat. I let out a small scream. The driver slammed the brakes. He shouted at me to get off the bus. He got out first and called for me to follow. "Don't stay in there alone," he said. I ran to him. He was stocky, sweating, clearly shaken. And that anxious look I'd thought was threatening, it was something else entirely. It was fear, raw, helpless fear. "She wasn't really there," he told me. "Did you see that? She just appeared. That's the second time I've seen her get on." I felt like ice water had been poured down my spine. I'd just seen a ghost. I didn't know what to say. He tried to calm himself down, apologized to me, then offered to get me home quickly since it was so late. So I got back on. I sat in the seat nearest him. I didn't dare look behind me, but he did. He kept checking the mirror, the same one that showed the whole bus, and every now and then he'd say softly, like he was reassuring us both, "She's not there anymore. She's gone. No one else is here." I got home safe that night, but I was shaking. Every now and then, I still see that driver again. We exchange glances. We never talk. I haven't seen anything since. I hope he hasn't either. If I spot him late in the evening, I always sit near the front. And when I get off, he tells me to take care. And even though I'm not religious, I always say the same thing back. God go with you. Because now I know, sometimes we're not alone. And some passengers were never meant to be there. This is Shadows of Fear, where the past rides with us and doesn't always get off. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. A few years ago, right after finishing college, I started looking for work wherever I could, just trying to help out at home. Eventually, I landed a job at a roadside motel. At first, I didn't think much of it, but later, I realized no one really wanted to work there anymore. On my first night, there were 3 of us being trained for the night shift. A woman was showing us the ropes. Me, a guy named Benny, and a girl called Raina. It was the kind of place you pay for by the hour. The motel sat on a busy boulevard, lively during the day, but eerily empty at night. The nearest thing was a petrol station, about 100 meters away. We asked the woman why all the night staff had been replaced at once, why it was just us newbies. That's when she told us something awful had happened in one of the rooms. Something terrible. A crime. Room 45. It wasn't to be rented out, not even if the place was completely full. We figured maybe the police were still involved somehow. So we started our shift, trying to act normal. Only 2 rooms were occupied. The woman soon came over and said she had to step out for a bit. She'd be back in a few hours. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Before leaving, she reminded us there was no cleaning staff that night. Benny was to check the rooms once they were vacated, and Raina and I were to stay up front at reception. Raina and I got to chatting. Benny ran a few errands and eventually joined us. It was dull, honestly. From the front desk, you could just about see a stretch of the boulevard, completely empty, not a soul in sight. Then the phone rang. One of the guests asked for a couple of beers. It was a young man on the other end, sounded jittery. Benny took them over. About an hour passed, still quiet. We carried on talking about what had brought each of us to work in a motel like this. Different paths, but oddly similar stories, enough to feel like we understood one another. The phone rang again. Same room, same voice, asking for another couple of beers, even more nervous this time. Raina decided she'd go, even though it wasn't her turn. When she came back, she was a bit amused. She said she'd caught a glimpse of the lad and his companion, a woman, much older than him. Said he looked incredibly shy, like it was his first time doing something like this. Benny and I had a laugh. We were probably about his age ourselves. Then the phone rang again. We chuckled, expecting yet another drinks order. Raina picked up. "Reception, how can I help you?" Then again, "Reception, good evening. Can I get you anything else?" She was smiling, picturing that same awkward lad. But then I noticed something. The light on the phone? It wasn't coming from his room. It was coming from room 45. I motioned to Raina. Benny was standing with us. The three of us froze. There was breathing on the line. And then it hung up. Technically, Benny's job was to check the rooms, but there was no way we were letting him go alone. We were all too scared to split up. So we went together through the back corridor where the guest room doors lined the wall. We stopped at the one that led to room 45. The door was shut. The air smelled thick with dust. No one had been in there for a long time. It was dark, but you could feel it. Someone or something was in there. We went back to reception. Benny picked up his things, looked us dead in the eye, and said there was no way he was staying. Just like that, 2 hours into his first shift, he left. We watched him disappear down that empty boulevard. It was creepy, sure, but probably not as creepy as staying behind. I turned to Raina, asked what she wanted to do. She said she wouldn't be coming back the next night, but that she couldn't just walk out mid-shift either. So we messaged the woman who'd trained us, told her what happened, that Benny had walked, that we were shaken. She replied, said if we waited a little longer for her to return, one of us could leave. The other could stay on just to help close the shift, and she'd pay us both for a few days' work. In the end, we stayed. Nothing else happened that night. The woman didn't explain anything, but something in her tone told us this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. We finished the shift, but neither of us ever came back. I never saw Raina or Benny again. The motel eventually shut down. Sometime later I passed by. It was open again. Refurbished. Different name. But I wonder, do things like that fade with time? Or does something still linger in that place? Does room 45 still whisper at night? Have you ever worked somewhere with a secret? Have you felt that cold, watching presence in a room that should have been empty? Let us know in the comments. Your story might just become the next one we tell, here on Shadows of Fear. Now, let's continue. This story isn't the most spectacular thing you'll ever hear, and I doubt it's the scariest either, but I'll let you be the judge of that. It happened at the start of 2024. My girlfriend's uncle came to visit us. He lives in a village about 3 hours away from the city, and he owns a couple of cabins that he rents out seasonally through one of those apps. Before heading to the airport, he was traveling abroad for a few months. He handed us the keys to one of the cabins, told us we could go whenever we liked. The only thing was, the heating wasn't working at the time, which is why he hadn't listed it on Airbnb recently. Back then, I was going through a rough patch. I had a major project due at work, and I just couldn't concentrate at home. I was sharing a flat with 2 housemates, and honestly, we weren't getting on anymore. Constant arguments, tension in every room. I mentioned it to my girlfriend, and her dad, who overheard, reminded her that we had the cabin keys. He told me I could go for a few days, get some peace and quiet, finish what I needed to. No phone signal, no decent Wi-Fi, but I figured maybe that would help. Complete disconnection. Just me and the words. So I said yes. I plugged the address into my sat-nav and drove out there. The place was remote. I mean, properly remote. Not just far from the city, But even the village felt like a distant memory by the time I arrived. No neighbors, no shops, not even the main road within sight. The little signal they mentioned, more like none. Every now and then my phone would briefly connect, just enough to dump a pile of messages at once. I'd try replying, but they'd sit there for minutes before actually going through. I opened the windows to air the place out. It smelled of dust and old wood, but I'm not fussy with things like that. I unpacked, opened my laptop, tried to get some work done, but I was so tired. From the trip, from everything, I must have dozed off right there at the desk, head on the keyboard, until my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. There was a voice, strange, quiet, and slow. It said, "Don't try to close the windows." Cold. I felt it, all down my spine. I turned to look. The windows were still wide open. I got up and shut them straight away, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. Who had called me? There was no one around. Literally no one. No signal. No people. No way anyone could have known I was there, except my girlfriend and her dad, and they wouldn't have done something like that. I locked everything up, packed my things, got in the car, and drove back to the village. Found a tiny hotel and stayed there. Not much, but at least I could focus. I finished the project over the next 2 days. I never told my girlfriend I couldn't spend even a single night in that cabin. She still mentions it sometimes. Says we should go for a weekend, that she's still got the spare keys, that the invitation's still open. I just always say no. And I don't know how to tell her the truth, that I don't ever want to go near that place again. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. What I'm about to tell you happened shortly after we stayed over at my mom's cousin's place because of a family emergency. It wasn't far, but some unexpected things happened that kept us with relatives until very late. They decided it'd be best if we stayed nearby, in the house just around the back alley. I ended up sleeping in the kids' room, but that night, the kids weren't there. They told me to make myself comfortable, and that if I needed anything, my mom would be in the next room. The room itself was fine, but there was something about it that really unsettled me. The window looked out onto the backyard of a Christian church. It was a tiny patch of ground, some dry grass, and a metal gate. I pulled the thick, heavy curtains closed, the kind that block out all the light. I don't like those curtains. I hate waking up in the morning not being able to see any daylight. But that night, I preferred shutting them tight rather than staring at that view that somehow just made me uneasy. There's something about churches, no matter the religion, that scares me at night. The way they're full of people during the day, praising God, but come nightfall, empty and silent. It feels like they turn into the opposite of what they are. Maybe it's just me. I closed the window, turned off the light, and tried to sleep. Morning came, and I woke up hearing the sound of a kid playing, like he was running around right behind the window in the churchyard, laughing, playing alone, making noises like with a toy car. I was lying there with my eyes shut, not wanting to open them yet, just wanting to fall back asleep. But the kid wouldn't stop making noise. Then I heard a woman come near. She started scolding him, soft at first, then louder and angrier. She was yelling at him badly, really harsh. Then I heard thumps. I got mad. I got up and went to open the curtain. I wanted that woman to see that someone was listening, that she wasn't alone, that she should stop. But as soon as I touched the curtain and pulled it up, everything stopped. Silence. When I opened it fully, I realized it was still night. Right in front of me was that churchyard, pitch dark. Not a soul in sight. I went straight to my mom's room. I didn't say a word, just asked if I could stay with her. And even though she didn't ask me anything, the next day she told me she never liked sleeping in that house, that it always gave her weird vibes. Only then did I tell her what had happened. My mom said that in some places, on certain nights, you can hear the voices of the dead. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. This story happened to me recently. It was very brief, but I still can't find any explanation for it. Even though the object I think caused it is no longer here, I keep wondering if maybe it wasn't the object itself that was wrong. Maybe it was this place. So I'm writing here to see what you all think. It all started with my daughter, who's 7 years old. She's a very sweet, calm, imaginative girl, genuinely kind-hearted. She's never been afraid of being alone. She'd spend time in her room, playing, falling asleep without any trouble. But then she started saying strange things. At first, I didn't take it seriously. She told me she didn't want to go to the bathroom alone, didn't want to brush her teeth there, and preferred to do it in my room instead. I thought maybe she was just being lazy or trying to avoid brushing, but it wasn't just once or twice anymore. It became every single night. She'd take her toothbrush, cup, toothpaste, everything, and come into my bathroom. I asked her what was wrong. She said her reflection was saying nasty things to her in the mirror. I told her that was impossible. Reflections can't talk. Maybe she dreamed it, or it was just her imagination. But she wouldn't listen. Like what I said made no sense at all. Then she started sleeping badly, waking up in the middle of the night and coming into my bed. Eventually, she just stayed there to sleep. She always took her little blanket, her toys, and she didn't want to go back to her room. I wanted to comfort her, so I told her I'd sleep with her that night, that I'd make sure nothing would happen. And I did. That night I lay down beside her in her little bed. She fell asleep quickly, and I was drifting off too, but something woke me up. It was a soft tapping, like someone lightly tapping on glass, twice. I opened my eyes, confused, thinking my daughter had gotten up, but when I turned, she was right there beside me. I sat up slowly. The bathroom door was open, and through it, I saw something. A figure, a girl exactly like my daughter, peering out from the darkness of the bathroom, hands pressed against the mirror glass, watching silently. Without thinking, I got up, walked over to the bathroom door, and shut it. I didn't want to look again. I didn't want to find out. The next morning, as soon as it was light, I ripped the bathroom mirror off the wall. It was one of those big ones stuck to the wall. I managed to take it down, dragged it outside, and left it on the street. That day the rubbish truck was due, but it never took the mirror. Someone took it before the truck arrived. I don't know who. I only know it wasn't there when I went back to check. And now I don't know what to think. I don't know if whatever it was in the mirror and left with it, or if the mirror was just a way for it to show itself. And it's still here in the house, even if it no longer has a way to appear. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. Just about a month ago, I had a creepy experience I still can't get out of my head. It happened over the weekend. One of those where you decide to stay in, do absolutely nothing, binge Netflix, and just bask in the joy of not having to deal with the world. But that Saturday turned out different. My best friend Daniela was celebrating her birthday. And even though I'm not really the party type, there was no way I could miss it. It wasn't even a wild party or anything, more of a low-key hangout. And honestly, I was in the mood to just spend some time with her and our other friends. Chat a bit, have a few drinks, chill with good company, and call it a night. I live about a 10-minute drive from where the party was. Around 6:30 p.m., I grabbed my car keys and headed out. Like I said, it wasn't some huge bash, just our close group, a few drinks, and some good conversation until the night caught up with us. When most people started heading out, I'd say around 1 a.m., I figured it wasn't smart to drive home buzzed. I don't like crashing at other people's places or booking a hotel, so, a bit irresponsibly, I thought, I'll just walk back to my place. My friends thought it was a good idea to leave my car parked at their place, so I wouldn't risk driving under the influence, getting a ticket, or worse. It made sense. I already knew the route, so I wasn't too worried. It was just a 25 to 30-minute walk through quiet neighborhoods. So, I said my goodbyes, stepped out of the house, and started walking. The atmosphere was super calm. Everything was quiet. No cars on the road, no one out and about, barely any lights on. Nothing. Just complete stillness. I figured most people must be asleep by now. But after a few minutes of walking, something started to feel off. I noticed a pair of headlights coming down the street. They weren't very bright, and the car slowed down as it got closer. When it reached me, it came to a full stop right next to where I was walking. It was dark, so I could barely make out that it was a car. The window rolled down a bit, but not all the way, and with the poor lighting, I couldn't really see who was inside. A man's voice asked if I was okay or if I needed a ride. I thanked him and told him I was fine. Without saying much else, the car drove off. At the time, I didn't think too much about it. He sounded polite enough, like maybe he was just trying to be nice, make sure I was safe. Still, considering the setting, late at night, empty neighborhood, it did feel kind of weird. I kept walking, eyes straight ahead. Everything stayed quiet for the next few minutes. But just as I was starting to relax and think everything was fine, I saw a reflection behind me on the pavement. The streetlight bounced off something, and suddenly, it lit up. As I turned my head, I noticed a car coming back in the opposite direction, on the same street I had just walked down. The strange part was that it didn't just drive past me. Instead, it stopped right in the middle of the street and parked. That struck me as even weirder. Coincidence? The same car, turning around and heading right toward me, and then just stopping there? It felt like something straight out of a horror movie. I tried not to get paranoid, but I couldn't help glancing back several times. The car didn't move. It just sat there, completely still, in silence. By the time I'd crossed into the next section of the neighborhood, I tried to convince myself it was probably just a coincidence. But the feeling of dread started to creep in. Walking alone at night through these empty streets can be really unsettling. Everything had a strange, off vibe. I tried to stay calm and keep walking. When I was about 10 minutes away from my apartment, something made my skin crawl. There was another car up ahead, parked right in the middle of the road, headlights fully on, but not on the curb or to the side, right in the center, blocking the street. I looked closer. To my horror, I realized it was the same car, same make, same color, same lights, and it was parked in a spot that felt deliberate, like it was meant for me. A lump formed in my throat immediately. What was going on? The idea that this was all just coincidence was slipping away fast. There were only a couple of ways to get home from where I was: the usual street route or a shortcut through a nearby park, lined with trees and completely dark at night. I always avoided that park after sunset because it had no lights. The fact that the car was sitting right there scared me too much to keep going that way. I started thinking that if I wanted to make it out of this, maybe my best option was to take the path through the park and get as far away from the car as I could. But just as I was making that decision, I realized the car wasn't just blocking the road. It was parked even farther ahead, right near the park entrance. It was like it had moved there on purpose, waiting for me at the worst possible spot. Like it wanted to corner me. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but I worried that running might make it worse. And then, in that split second, a news story flashed through my mind. A girl in Mexico had left a party with some friends and vanished. They later found her inside a tank or some kind of container. I don't remember exactly. The report said she'd been intercepted by an unknown vehicle while walking home. That was the last time anyone saw her. My stomach twisted into a knot. Still, I decided to move quietly. I slipped past the car, trying not to make a sound. It was the only way to get into the forest path, where a vehicle wouldn't be able to follow me. But the closer I got to the woods, the more my hair stood on end. Trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence, I walked right next to the car. And the scariest part, I looked through the windshield and saw it was empty. No one inside. Just when I thought I could finally breathe a little, something in the shadows behind the car made me freeze. A figure. A man's silhouette, barely visible in the dark, standing behind some nearby trees, watching me. Panic shot through me. It was like he'd read my mind and knew exactly what I was planning, to sneak through that trail. There he was, waiting to ambush me. I didn't think twice. I bolted, running as fast as I could without looking back. I raced past the car, and that's when I heard it, heavy footsteps behind me. Then the sound of someone getting into the car. The engine roared, and it started speeding toward me. I screamed for help, and didn't stop running until I reached my apartment building. The car was right behind me, almost catching up, but thanks to my shouting, a few people started peeking out from their windows. That probably saved me. The man must have realized he'd been seen, because he turned the car around and sped off down another street. As soon as I made it inside, I called the police and told them everything. It was crystal clear. This was an attempted kidnapping, or something even worse. The way the car was parked in the middle of the street, the driver hiding in the trees, it was all way too suspicious. The scariest part of it all? With just a car description and no clear ID on the man's face or voice, they're probably never going to find him, let alone arrest him. One thing's for sure, there's no way I'm ever walking alone on that street at night again. It's only now sinking in how close I came to something terrible. I hope whoever reads this takes it seriously. Sometimes it's just one small decision or a gut feeling that stands between you and tragedy. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now let's continue. That night, I was at home planning to stay up late to catch up on some work papers I'd been putting off. Honestly, I'd been procrastinating way too much, and I knew it was time to get my act together. But you know how it goes. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I had more on my mind than I could handle. Last week had been pretty chaotic, and I ended up leaving everything to the last minute. So I made myself a strong cup of coffee, headed up to my office, and locked the door to avoid any distractions. It was my strategy to stay focused through the night without anything getting in the way. I have to say, at first, things were going pretty well. I was deep into the task, sipping my coffee with some music playing in the background. I really thought it was going to be a calm, productive night, but of course, things never go exactly as planned, do they? After a few hours, I started to feel my energy slowly drain away. My head was drooping, and the coffee wasn't doing much for me anymore, so I figured maybe a quick break would help. I got up and went down to the kitchen to make another cup. While the machine was doing its thing, I noticed this weird chill in the air. Something I hadn't felt earlier, like there was something off floating around down there. I went over to check the thermostat, and sure enough, the heating was on. But the temperature didn't match. For some reason, it was colder than it should have been, several degrees lower. That's when I looked around more carefully and noticed that one of the windows at the back of the living room was wide open. Not just cracked open, but all the way, like someone had pushed it open and then just left it. Now I do tend to open those windows during the day to let some air in, but as far as I could remember, I hadn't left any of them open that evening. That kind of thing never goes unnoticed, especially not by me. I walked over slowly and peeked out to see what was going on. A bit on edge, I looked down to check if there were any footprints on the ground or any sign that someone might have come in or out. Nothing. No footprints, no marks in the dirt, nothing out of place. The window was wide open, but there was no sign anyone had been there. In moments like that, your brain tries to rationalize it. You probably forgot to close it. Maybe it was just the wind or something equally harmless. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I shut the window, grabbed my fresh coffee, and went back upstairs to the office. About 30 minutes later, while I was trying to get back into work mode, my mind just kept wandering. Something still felt off. I couldn't shake that weird feeling I'd had since seeing the window open. So I decided to do a quick walkthrough of the house, just to be sure nothing was out of the ordinary. I checked the rooms, the hallway. Everything looked fine. Nothing unusual. Everything in its place. But still, that tension lingered in the air. However, just when I thought it was all over, something completely unexpected happened. I heard a loud bang right behind me. But it wasn't thunder or anything like that. It was a sharp, solid noise, like someone had slammed a wall or something in that room, hard. I froze for a few seconds, completely thrown off. There was nothing on the floor, nothing on the desk, nothing that could have made that sound. I looked toward the bedroom door, which is right across the hallway, and thought maybe the sound had come from in there. So I checked from the doorway, scanning the room. Everything looked normal, nothing out of place. It was strange because a noise that loud, something that forceful, should have left some sort of trace. But no, the room was perfectly tidy, no sign of anything falling or shifting. To be honest, that's when the thought started creeping in. Maybe I was losing it. I'd been up all night, stressed out, worried about a bunch of things. Maybe my brain was just playing tricks on me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I went back to my office and tried to refocus on what I'd been doing before, but just minutes later, I couldn't keep it together. That feeling that someone or something was in my house just wouldn't go away. The tension was unbearable, and even though I kept telling myself to stay calm, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder every now and then, like something might suddenly appear. Then, without even thinking, I turned to look directly behind me, right where I'd heard that bang, the wall behind my chair. And there, in the corner, was a small wardrobe. One of those narrow ones I used to store old clothes and random stuff. I got up slowly and walked toward it, as if something deep down was telling me I needed to check inside. But then, suddenly, something happened that I'll never forget. Something that stopped me cold. The wardrobe door, which is normally shut tight, was slightly ajar, and what I saw inside took the breath right out of me. Way in the back, just a few inches away from me, were a pair of eyes staring straight at me from the darkness. There was a figure, or at least something that looked like a human figure. That thing, that man, was crouched deep in the corner of the wardrobe, hidden behind old jackets and clothes. His face pressed so close to the back wall I couldn't see him clearly. I stood there in complete shock, frozen in place. A wave of pure fear ripped through me. And before I could react, the figure started to move. Slowly it began to come out. There was no mistaking it. It was a person. But the most disturbing part, the thing that made me want to scream in terror, was that this man started saying my name, in a hoarse, chilling voice that sounded wrong. Twisted. That was it. My body went into full-blown panic mode. Instinct kicked in, and I bolted from the room, screaming for help like a madwoman. He started chasing me, and in the middle of all that chaos, I heard him yelling my name over and over, almost mocking me. His voice warped, threatening. Terrified out of my mind, heart pounding in my chest, I ran like I never have in my life. I didn't dare look back. I flew through the front door, and in seconds I was at my neighbor's house, pounding on their door like crazy, shouting, "Help! Please help!" over and over, completely hysterical, until someone finally came out. Only when the neighbors showed up and called the police did the full weight of what had just happened start to hit me. But when the cops entered the house, they found nothing. No sign of the man. No trace. He was gone, like he'd vanished into thin air. No footprints, no clues, nothing to show where he might have gone. And that made it even worse. Because if that man could sneak in so quietly, climb through a window, hide in that wardrobe, and then disappear without leaving a single mark, that means he could come back. Anytime. The worst part, he knew my name. He said it that night, over and over. And that can only mean one thing. He knew me. He wasn't just some random intruder. Was he a stalker? Some obsessed psychopath? I honestly don't know. But I do know this. If I hadn't decided to stay up that night to finish those documents, I might not be here right now telling this story. Even now, I still have nightmares about that figure, about those eyes, that voice, those awful echoing screams. The thought that someone was inside my house and I never even knew it, it haunts me. I can't stop thinking about it. And now, every time I walk past that corner of my room, I feel it again, that presence. Like he's still there, hiding, waiting, in the shadows. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. Last year, sometime around mid-January, I found myself living alone in a pretty small house in a tiny village surrounded by forests. Honestly, it was a super remote place, about a 45-minute drive from the nearest town. I only worked half days, and that night I was finally going to just relax at home without a care in the world. It was around 7 p.m. when my phone rang, and I saw it was the only friend I had in town, Jack. He told me he was having major car trouble, it wouldn't start, and he needed a hand. Maybe a ride home, and if possible, something to eat too. I didn't mind at all, so I told him I was on my way. We'd been through this before. It wasn't the first time, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I got up from the couch, grabbed my jacket hanging by the door, found my keys, and opened the front door to head out. But the moment I opened the door, my heart just jumped. I froze when I saw what was right in front of me. There was a guy standing on my porch, just a few steps from the entrance. He was wearing this huge coat and a black scarf that covered the lower half of his face. But the weirdest part? He didn't move at all when he saw me. He didn't flinch, didn't react, nothing. He just stood there, like he knew I'd seen him, but couldn't care less. For a second, I felt kind of silly for being so freaked out, but at the same time, I was seriously curious about what the hell this guy was doing on my porch at that hour. Before I could even say anything, the guy raised his hand and said sorry, said he was just about to knock. I told him it was fine and asked what he needed. He stood still for a few seconds, then calmly asked if I was David or Daryl. Can't remember exactly what name he said, but it was something along those lines. Obviously that wasn't me, so I told him no, that he had the wrong person. The guy just said, "All right," and slowly started walking off the porch, heading toward the street. I shut the door, locked it tight, and as he walked away, I made sure everything was in order before heading out in my car. I spent the drive talking to Jack about it, trying to figure out what that guy's deal was. My house is in a pretty isolated spot, in a neighborhood where barely anyone passes by, and the streets are long and lined with trees. You don't really get foot traffic there, especially not at night. So I guess, if he was just looking for someone to ask something, that might explain it. I got to Culver's for a quick bite after dropping Jack off at his place. It was already around 9 p.m. Snow had just started to fall, but overall everything was really calm. One of those typical cold, quiet nights, nothing out of the ordinary. When I got home, I went in, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. I sat on the couch for a bit and turned on the TV, not really paying attention, not in the mood to do much else. I'm not sure how much time went by, probably about 2 hours, before I started feeling sleepy. I got up, stretched, turned off the TV, and headed toward my room. But just as I passed by the front door, a thought suddenly hit me, and I froze in place. I remembered the weird guy on the porch. To be honest, I hadn't thought about him at all until that moment, but right then, the image just stuck in my mind. I walked over and looked through the peephole, just to ease my nerves and make sure he wasn't still around. To my relief, there was no one on the porch. Everything looked peaceful. The snow was falling gently, no real wind. But just as I was about to turn and head to my room, something caught my eye. Across the front walk, I noticed what looked like footprints in the snow. Ones that definitely hadn't been there before. They weren't super clear, but I could tell they came from the street, moved toward my car, then veered off into the yard where the trees blocked the view. That set off all my alarms immediately. I locked the door tight and started looking out the windows, trying to figure out what to do. The idea that the porch guy might be back, and maybe still hanging around, hit a lot harder now. I kept thinking about that strange encounter, and now, these footprints in the snow. I couldn't shake the chill that ran down my spine. Almost without thinking, I pulled out my phone and called the police. I told them everything. that some stranger had been at my door earlier, and now there were footprints in the snow, and something just didn't feel right. While I was talking to the dispatcher, I kept listening carefully for any sounds that might give away someone's presence nearby. But no matter how hard I tried to pick something up, everything stayed quiet, except for the soft sound of snow falling outside. Just when I started thinking maybe I was overreacting, I heard a loud, violent bang at the back of the house. It scared me so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. I jumped up and ran to the hallway, my heart pounding like crazy. I was about to open the back door to see what was going on when I saw someone outside. Just a silhouette, lit up by the light from inside. But I couldn't make out who it was. Then came another bang on the door. This one was heavier, like someone had something to break it down with. That's when I knew whoever it was had brought something to force their way in. Maybe a weapon or a tool. My heart just sank. I felt real danger then. I told the police, probably talking over myself with panic, what was happening, and they told me to either find a place to hide or get out if things got worse. That was all I needed to hear. There was no way I was sticking around to see what that guy, who could have easily been some maniac, wanted to do once he got in. I did what felt safest, grabbed my keys, bolted out the front door, and jumped into my car without hesitation. I started the engine and floored it, not caring about the snow all over the road. Luckily, there was no one near my car, and no one waiting out front. The intruder must have been too busy trying to break down the back door, so the front was clear. I drove like hell straight to the police station, and that's when I knew getting out was the right call. Because when the officers got to my house, the back door had clearly been hit and there were wet footprints all over inside. But whoever it was, they were already gone, and nothing had been stolen, not even my laptop, which was still open on the couch. The house was untouched, just those footprints. And no matter how much they looked into it, there was no clear trace of who they belonged to. That really creeped me out, because the fact that nothing was taken could only mean one thing. That person wasn't after my stuff. They were after me. The officers could only take my description of the guy, but there wasn't even solid proof it was the same person. Honestly, I don't know if he's still out there, but I have a feeling he is. I moved out of that house not long after. I was too shaken up, too on edge to keep living there. Now I live in a more populated neighborhood, but even now, whenever I pass through that area, I keep my eyes peeled, and sometimes I feel like he's still out there. Like maybe, just maybe, he'll find me again one day. I don't know who he was or what he wanted from me, but I'm sure of one thing: his intentions that night were anything but good. After that night, everything changed for me. That sense of unease, of never really being alone, it never fully left. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about it, trying to make sense of it all, but there's no logical explanation for what happened. I just hope I never have to go through anything like that again. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. This happened to me almost 8 years ago, and ever since, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. At the time, I was about 23 years old and camping alone in a remote area in northern Idaho, right in the middle of the forest. I didn't consider myself a super experienced camper, but I'd done plenty of long hikes and knew the basics of camping. That area is full of wildlife, including black bears and grizzlies, so being prepared for anything was a must. That scared off a lot of people who just went out for a casual stroll without much planning. Most campsites around there don't get many visitors. Sometimes when you find one, there's only 1 or 2 people, if that. Maybe you'll see a tourist or two wandering along a trail every now and then. Honestly, campsites in those parts tend to be quiet and pretty empty. That said, even though it wasn't required, I always preferred to avoid touristy spots and stick to less traveled trails. This time, I picked a trail just outside the region's most famous mountain range. It was a path cutting through the forest, climbing up some hills around the mountain, leading to an open clearing with incredible views of the range. The nearest trailhead I knew was about 3 miles away and ended at a small lake where I figured there might be a couple more people. So I didn't worry about that. And I was right. The whole hike, I didn't see a single soul, not even another hiker. The trail felt almost forgotten, and when I got to the campsite, it was completely empty and wide open. I set up my tent in the farthest corner, using some big rocks to make a small fire pit. I figured I had about 2 or 3 hours of daylight left, so I wasn't really in the mood to do anything big. The plan was just to sit there, watch the stars, and think about what I'd do the next day. When the sun went down, I lit the fire, roasted some marshmallows, and just stared up at the stars. The valley was utterly peaceful. The only sounds were a gentle breeze and the occasional animal call. Then, all of a sudden, the calm was broken. I heard a crunching noise, a repeated crunch coming from the forest. At first, I thought it was an animal, but within seconds I realized it wasn't. Someone was walking through the trees. I didn't know what to do. I just stood still, staring in that direction, feeling surprised and confused, not understanding why anyone else would be there at that hour, until he finally appeared at the edge of the camp. From his posture and the way he moved, I could tell he was a man, but with the fire's shadows dancing over his figure, I couldn't make out many details. I only noticed he was carrying a camping backpack. That was it. He just stood there, watching me and scanning around the campsite without saying a word. Before I could even open my mouth, he spoke very quietly, almost whispering, "I'm sorry." Then he immediately turned around and started walking back the way he came, away from me. The strangest part was how he said, "I'm sorry," like he was trying to keep it silent, not letting anyone else hear. His voice was barely a whisper, and honestly, that confused me more than it scared me. What was that guy doing there? Why was he apologizing? It didn't seem like he was just out for a walk. And to be honest, he didn't seem like he had bad intentions either. Still, something about his behavior gave me an uneasy feeling, like something wasn't quite right. I didn't feel exactly threatened, but his attitude, the way he acted, was way different from any normal hiker. His footsteps faded away, and the forest went quiet again, like nothing had happened. Despite the incident, I stayed there a few more minutes, just staring at the stars and trying to relax, pretending that moment hadn't really happened. That night, all I wanted was for that man to get somewhere safe and for nothing bad to happen to him. But really, I didn't dwell on it much. I stayed at my camp a bit longer, enjoying the peace of the forest until several hours passed. The moon started hiding behind the clouds, casting the whole forest in a gray shadow. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I still hadn't slept, so I sat by the fire, thinking night would fall soon. The idea was that with some sleep, everything would eventually calm down. Then, all of a sudden, I heard footsteps again. This time they were faster, like someone was running scared. The weirdest thing was that the steps came from the same spot where that man had been earlier that night. I got up, pretty worried, and looked into the shadows. To my surprise, there he was again, closer than before. I could see him clearly now. His beard was messy, his black hair greasy, and his clothes dirty. It looked like he'd been in a fight or had fallen to the ground. His eyes were wide open and full of fear, like someone or something had really scared him. But his mouth stayed tight, expressionless. "Are you okay?" I asked cautiously. You should have reached your camp by now. It's pretty late." The man, still panting, stood there struggling to catch his breath but stayed alert. His eyes flicked to my right for a few seconds, giving me the impression that something else had him on edge. Then he looked back at me. "Are you lost?" I asked. "Can I help you with something?" He muttered a no between his teeth and said he was just walking through the woods, didn't want to bother anyone. But his voice sounded strange, and his eyes darted back and forth nonstop, always glancing at something to my right, like he was seeing something beyond me. "Hey, you seem really nervous. If you want, I can help you send a signal with the radio or something." "No need to be afraid," I said, trying to calm him down. But he didn't answer. Instead, he stared at me more intensely, and that feeling that something was wrong grew stronger. Then his eyes shifted again to my right side. I couldn't take it anymore and looked over my shoulder. But there was nothing, just the dark, empty forest. That's when a terrible fear started creeping in. I had no idea what he was looking for or what he believed. The atmosphere became very tense, and I didn't want to keep talking to this guy. I just wanted to get out of there. Then I realized something was off. Every time I asked, "Why are you here?" or "Where are the others?" he got weirder. Suddenly, he dropped a question I didn't expect. "Have you been following me?" he said in a very low voice, but with a tension that gave me goosebumps. I felt something else was going on. His behavior started to change, getting really tense, like he truly suspected me or was worried about something he couldn't say. I told him no, that I didn't know him and had no idea what he was talking about. But right then, his eyes shifted behind me, and that was the worst. Suddenly, he froze and fixed his gaze on something even further back. His big, empty eyes seemed lost in the darkness, and before I could even react, he asked with a voice that made me shake, "So why are you with her?" And just as I heard that, I stepped back and quickly turned my head, looking over my right shoulder. But there was nothing. Just trees. Just darkness. Same as before. No sign of the figure he'd been seeing. I froze for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. Panic started creeping up my body. The first thing I thought was that this guy had been chased by something, or someone, in that forest. So I looked back at the woods, hoping some terrifying figure would come out and explain everything, or something like that. But instead, the man suddenly took off running for no apparent reason, heading deeper and deeper into the thicket, barely making a sound. Like he'd lost control. Within seconds, he disappeared into the darkness, and his footsteps vanished completely. My heart was pounding 1,000 miles an hour, and I still had no idea what the hell I'd just seen or what had happened to him. I desperately kept watching from behind, wondering what that figure could have been, whether someone really was chasing him, or if it was all just madness in his mind. In that moment, the only thought that calmed me down a bit was that if someone else was out there, it was probably better to get out fast and not look back. So, without hesitating, I shoved everything into my backpack and started walking quickly toward my car. When I got there, I could still feel the tension, like my heart was about to explode. But I took a deep breath and got out of there as fast as I could. The next day, I went to the police station and left a note explaining what had happened, describing the man, just in case someone was looking for him. Honestly, after all this, I was left with a huge question. What the hell did that guy see in the forest? What was chasing him? And most importantly, what happened to him? Because even though I tried to come up with a logical explanation, maybe he got lost and was stuck there. Or maybe he was paranoid, or even that someone really was following him. The truth is, I never found out what really went down. After that night, I never heard anything about that man again. A few weeks later, I went back and asked the park ranger, but apparently no one knew anything and he was never seen around there again. which makes me think maybe he never made it out of the forest, or he just disappeared, like the void swallowed him whole. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community, and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. Last year, I took a solo road trip from Wisconsin all the way to Montana, and wow, what an experience it was. Most of the drive was on lonely, almost deserted highways. Except for the first few hours and the very end, all I saw in between was forest, open fields, and sometimes those small mountains that start popping up the further west you go. Honestly, most of the trip was just in the middle of nowhere, in complete silence. I planned it that way on purpose so I wouldn't have to stop at hotels, because I knew that driving through the night and resting during the day would save me time and a bit of money. The plan was to start at 7 p.m. Before I left, I double-checked that I had everything packed. I had my snacks, water, and a few things in the passenger seat with me when I set off. At first, I had to drive through the city and some small towns, but after that, it turned into one long stretch of empty roads, with barely any cars passing by and hardly any gas stations for miles. Just a couple of pumps every 15 miles or so. After passing a couple of those, I'd already used up a third of my tank, and even though I still had a decent amount of fuel left, I figured it was smarter to fill up before heading deeper into that remote area. Finding a gas station to stop at took me about 20 minutes. It was tiny, like one of those places stuck in the last century. 4 pumps, no convenience store or anything. When I got there, I parked right next to a pump, got out, and started filling up. The gas was coming out agonizingly slow, like at one of those stations where they haven't restocked in forever. Only a little trickled out every minute, so I leaned against the car and waited. Suddenly, a car appeared down the road. They were going ridiculously slow, like 20 or 30 in a 55 miles per hour zone. They zipped past the gas station, but a little further ahead, instead of keeping on, they slowed down, made a U-turn, and came back. It was strange, even dangerously reckless on such a quiet, traffic-free night. They ended up pulling into the station and parked right at the pump behind me. I figured maybe they'd gotten lost and were just looking to fill up. Nothing out of the ordinary. I went back to my business, keeping an eye on my gas, when suddenly I heard someone get out of the car and walk to their side. But something felt off. After about a minute, with no sign of them starting to pump gas or do anything, I glanced over to see what was going on. That's when I saw the guy. A man wearing a gray flannel shirt and black jeans, staring straight at me from inside his car. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. I got that creepy feeling like they'd been watching me the whole time. I forced a nervous smile, nodded my head, then looked away. But I couldn't shake the feeling that his eyes were boring right through me. About 10 seconds passed, and that's when I heard him grab the pump and start filling up his tank. I felt a little relief, thinking maybe he was just distracted, or doing the same thing I was, topping off at this old gas station in the middle of nowhere to make sure he didn't run out later. I kept waiting, hoping he'd finish soon so I could be on my way. At some point, I felt like I'd waited long enough, so I pulled the hose from the pump, secured the gas cap, started my car, and turned to head back out onto the road. Before I pulled away, I glanced back at the other car, but the guy was gone. The car was still parked by the pump, with the hose still in, but he was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go? I wondered. Then, right at that moment, something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. That's when I saw him. The guy was there, sitting in my backseat, staring at me with wide-open eyes. I nearly had a heart attack. I jumped out of the car, my heart pounding, and slammed the door shut as I took off running. The other car was still in reverse and started backing up slowly as I hurried away. Without looking back, I ran into the woods surrounding the gas station, shaking and trying to make sense of what the hell was happening. I watched my car roll back a few more feet, out of my control, until it finally stopped. Then silence fell. That's when I realized my phone was still on the dashboard. Frozen in shock, listening to the rain tapping on the roof of my car, I looked back toward my vehicle in the dark, tears welling up. And then, to my horror, I saw that the guy was no longer there. When did he get out? When did he get in? And the scariest question of all, where was he now? I couldn't see him anywhere, and that was the part that terrified me the most. But just when I thought it couldn't get any creepier, I heard the man's car start up. The windows were tinted and rolled all the way up, so I couldn't tell if it was him behind the wheel or if anyone else was in there. My heart was pounding like crazy, and I couldn't make sense of what was happening. The car stayed running for a few minutes without moving, until finally it backed up and slowly disappeared down the road. I didn't leave my hiding spot right away. I just stood there, in the middle of the rain, frozen and trying to process the worst nightmare I'd ever lived through, with what little clarity I had left. I looked over at my car, and to my horror, the door was wide open. The keys were still in the ignition, and a bunch of stuff was scattered all over the back seat. I was still way too terrified to move, but I gathered all my courage and ran back to my car. Clearly, a lot of my things were missing, but luckily, I found my phone on the floor next to the passenger seat. It was locked, but I was still able to dial 911 from the lock screen. My hands shaking and my voice barely more than a whisper, my first instinct was to slam on the gas and get out of there as fast as possible. But then I realized maybe that man could be waiting for me further down the road, so I drove the opposite way and headed back to the last gas station I'd seen. There was a convenience store full of travelers and a small motel. I decided to rent a room, and from there, I called the police again. I have no idea what happened after that, but I was never contacted about whether the man was found. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I decided to get back on the road the next day, but definitely without the same enthusiasm I'd had before. The whole trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that man could be waiting for me anywhere. Thankfully, I made it to my destination without any other problems. But that creepy episode never left my mind. All I can say is I'll never forget that night. And no matter how much I try to make sense of it, that feeling still haunts me. That something really, really bad almost happened to me. For real. If you're enjoying these dark tales and want more, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Shadows of Fear, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every bit of support helps us keep exploring the unknown together. Come, be part of this community and don't miss a single story. Now, let's continue. A few days ago, actually about 4 days back, I had an experience that still has me thinking and just won't get out of my head. So, I was watching my best friend's dogs while he was off backpacking for a few days. His house is pretty remote, right at the foot of a hill, sitting on several acres of land. The house itself is right on the edge of the street that runs through this small rural neighborhood. The community is kind of weird. On one hand, it's super close-knit and everyone knows each other. But on the other, most of the houses look half abandoned or in pretty rough shape, mixed with some that seem brand new and well kept. That's just how it is around there. So honestly, I'm not scared staying alone to watch over everything. In fact, I actually feel safe when I'm with the dogs. Quick pause to tell you that my bigger dog, a mix between an American Bulldog and a Labrador, weighs about 115 pounds and is completely black. He's all power, and ever since I started dating my friend, he's become my biggest protector. My other dog, La, is smaller, around 57 pounds, a mix between a poodle and something else. I'm a dog groomer, so Law always gets these funny hairstyles with little bows and stuff. Just to give you an idea, one's a tough-looking fur ball and the other's softer, but both are really strong. Most of the time when I take them for a walk, I let Law off the leash first because she's easier to handle and safer for me. Then I go back to get Genesis, that's what I call him, to walk him alone. I do this at night when it's darker and colder. So here's the thing. That night, about 4 days ago, we'd been walking around the neighborhood for maybe 20 minutes with Law when I got this weird feeling in the air. Like the kind of feeling you get when someone else is watching you. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and when I looked around about 30 feet away, I saw this tall guy with a hoodie standing next to an old, run-down house. I don't know. Something just felt off. That hoodie looked really strange. We were up in Northern California, in the middle of August. It's not cold, not even at night, especially with the sun going down. But at that moment, I tried to brush it off, because I tend to get pretty paranoid after all the scary stories I've read. I kept walking, and as the sun dipped lower, everything slowly started getting darker. But out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that person was keeping pace with me. Like they didn't want to lose sight of me. They just kept matching my steps. If I turned a corner, so did they. If I sped up, they sped up too. That uneasy feeling just wouldn't go away. When we got to the main street, I crossed right before a car sped past, thinking maybe that would help put some distance between us. But no, the guy kept walking right behind me, keeping that same pace. Law started sniffing around and barking, clearly worried, and I, terrified, tried to hurry as much as I could. I ran as fast as I could and rushed into the house, locking every door and making sure everything was secure. I just wanted it all to end there. But things weren't going to calm down that easily. Right after I closed the door, I started hearing banging, like someone was trying to force it open. The dogs were barking non-stop, which never happens without a reason. The door itself is pretty thin, so I shouted, asking who it was and telling them to leave. From the other side, I heard a voice that sent chills down my spine. "I love your dog. Can I meet her?" That line, said in that cold, flat tone, didn't sit right with me. I don't know, it was weird, like it was rehearsed or something. I yelled no and told him to go away. There was a pause, but he didn't stop. He started pushing the door again, trying to get in. Genesis, my dog, started noticing and barking fiercely, switching to full-on protector mode. Law started growling and barking loudly too, like she sensed something was wrong. In total panic, I locked Law in the bathroom and grabbed Genesis by the collar, who by then was losing control. He kept barking aggressively, furious, like he was letting out all his anger. Then I heard that same voice again, repeating that he wanted to meet my dog. But I was beyond control at that point and shouted that he should leave or I'd call the police. Then there was silence for a second, and suddenly he pushed harder, trying to get in. The door started moving, and instinctively, I unlocked it and opened it just a crack, enough for Genesis to get out. My dog, completely enraged, lunged at the guy, biting and barking non-stop. Apparently, he wasn't expecting that kind of resistance. He stumbled back, nearly falling and cursing, then quickly ran up the hill and disappeared. He didn't look back. Clearly, he was scared of being attacked again by my dog. The only reason Genesis didn't chase him down was because I had him on the leash the whole time. So that guy got lucky. I didn't waste a second. I was in shock, but I locked the door tight and called the police to explain what had happened. I couldn't get a good look at him, just that tall shadow and the hood. They told me there didn't seem to be anything going on at the moment, that they took note and said they'd contact me if anything else happened. Honestly, I'm so grateful to Genesis for protecting us. After all that terror, I curled up with him and Law, crying over how scary it all was. The next day, I went to the biggest pet store I could find. It was almost an hour away, and bought the biggest bone they had. He'd earned it. I also got a gift for Law, though I still don't get why that guy didn't realize both dogs were barking so loudly. I think he just thought Law was a tiny little pup and didn't notice there was a huge, fierce dog ready to defend us. Looking back, I realize how lucky it was that guy didn't have a weapon. That would have been way worse. In hindsight, maybe I should have called the cops way earlier and kept the door locked tight. But at the time, all I thought about was Genesis and how his size alone could save me. I know it wasn't the calmest night of my life, and I still can't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. But I also know that if he comes back, I'm not staying quiet. I have my dog, and I know our team can protect us. I just hope that person, whoever they are, doesn't come back. Because if they do, I'm pretty sure Genesis won't be so forgiving next time. Thank you for listening to our stories until the end. Now, feel free to leave your like and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next episodes.